Hey everyone, welcome back to Lawyers Mediators International, LMI podcast, part of the LMI network. Back here with Katy Harris and a special guest, Penny Ruth Willis, who will be talking to us today about what we always talk about, which is conflict resolution and trying to help address disputes in people's lives. Today's focus will be on children. It's going to be a follow up to the last video we had done with Katy when it was regarding her recent article, A Boy is Dead, and we're not going to be a part of it anymore. So let's just start off with some introductions first off. And why don't we start with Katy, who you are a regular now. And I will share your website, Mediation Matters Midlands, when you are talking. So go ahead, just reintroduce yourself to the folks who might not know you.
Okay, I'm Katy Harris. I am a family mediator and trainer from England. I'm also the co-host of Bridging the Gap conference, which we've got coming up in March, which I know we'll speak about later. And I do work alongside Penny with a lot of our work. There's a lot of overlap in it as well.
Yes, yes. And so now, of course, you undersell yourself, but you are also a world traveler, renowned speaker, somebody who's been doing this work and helping people deal with conflict in their lives for many years. And so I think, again, I remind myself the first time we met was in Chicago at the ABA conference where you were speaking, on
Mhm.
these topics. And so very much appreciate your work, and I thank you so much for always coming back to give so much, advice, not legal advice, but so much
Thanks
advice to
for
the
having
people. Yes,
me.
for people who are out there. And yes, you did mention bridging the gap. We'll come back to that in a second, but before, let's get over to Penny. So, Penny, nice to meet you. It's my first time being introduced to you. And so I've heard a lot about you and the kind of work you do. But go ahead and share with people who you are and the kind of work you do.
Okay, it's lovely to meet you too, and thank you for having me. So I'm a couple and family therapist, I'm a psychologist, I'm a systemic practitioner, and I'm director of NVR Northampton, where we specialise in the non-violent resistance approach. And we work with families and we train professionals, and we're working to develop the approach into different areas.
Awesome. And so, yes, your work is fascinating. And I know a lot of your work kind of spills over to a lot of the work that Katy does. So, this is why you guys are a good combo to have on, together. So, we're
Yeah.
definitely going to learn what NVR is. I've been studying it, and I'm not a parent myself, but I deal with children a whole lot through the work
hmm
I do. And so, I know that this work deals with not just parents in conflict or spouses, people who are divorcing in conflict, but also their children and how we handle uh, discipline. I think that's a
hmm
big,
Yep.
big topic. It's something universal, right? Everybody has issues when it comes to disciplining kids, and so we
Yes.
can always learn from each other.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get started, Katy, could you just tell us the status about Bridging the Gap conference that's happening in March?
So I wanted to repeat after you the status of the conference as it stands is everything's going really well. We have got our sponsors. We've still got a couple of sponsorship places left. Tickets are selling really fast. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers, including, of course, Penny. So yeah, it's all going really well. Looking forward to it on the 19th and 20th of March this year in London.
Yes. And so I guess our talk today is going to be a little bit of a preview about what to expect at Bridging the Gap,
Mhm.
because it we are kind of bridging two gaps. We're bridging a gap between the work that you both do actually today. And the whole point of this conference, remind people, Katy, why should people go? What is it all about?
Well, it's really for anyone who works with families, particularly during separation or post separation. It is about exactly what we're talking about today. It's about needing to have a network of support around families, particularly during and after separation, where children get caught in the middle of conflict, where they can end up torn between two parents, when they become very vulnerable to criminal exploitation, where they can also become much more vulnerable to mental health difficulties and risk-taking behaviour. So the conference is really about how do we do better than what we're doing at the moment? How do we support these parents and families in a better way rather than utilising each of the different services in silos and then just passing the problem essentially on to another area for them to pick up, as opposed to working as a whole and knitting all of our expertise together in order to provide the best support.
Exactly. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. We're
Mhm.
not going to be passing the buck anymore. We're going to try to deal with these issues in a definitive way. So let me set the stage a little bit. I'm a family mediator. I deal a lot with parents sometimes who are in conflict over their children. A lot of times these kids are teenagers and they're looking for both parents to be united, to give them common support, and to basically help them go through life, to help them become healthy young adults. But a lot of times there are roadblocks and roller coasters we go through. And sometimes the courts, which are supposed to set up to help us bring order out of chaos, don't really do that good of a job. And parents sometimes find themselves a little lost and confused about what they're supposed to do or best practices. Again, there's no rule book on how to deal with these things. So when we look to you professionals, okay, you guys are the key. What are some things that can be done to help make sure children live healthy lives? Specifically, when it comes to conflict between the parents and how it impacts the children, and then conflict between the parent to the child, because we all know the stories where kids sometimes have put their hands on their own parents. Uh, and sometimes these things go out of control to where, as in Katie's recent article, it results in the tragic loss of a young man, because he didn't have the support mechanisms that were supposed to be around him to help make sure that he successfully goes through life. Everything that's part of the system kind of failed him. But the two most important people, the parents, they were the ones who were completely in tune with one another to be there for him, to help him out. So I'll also bring up the fact that me as a mediator, when I'm trying to help parents deal, I'm always giving them the same kind of story. Hey, I'm like, hey guys, look, you got to work together. You have to put your child first. You have to make sure that you guys are not using the child as a ball in the middle that's being kicked back and forth, and because that's going to impact the kid. Kids are going to feel that. They're going to sense it. They're going to know that their parents are at odds, and they're going to fall through the cracks. But I wish there was so much more I could share. So hopefully today will give some people tips that they could actually use. So with that, would you like to start, Katie, by bringing up some of the points of your article, just to remind people, or should we just go right into it with Penny about about what NVR is and how it can help?
Yeah, I mean, I think Penny knows my work very well, and I think there is such an overlap of the two things that we do that probably anything that Penny's going to speak to you about with NVR will link to that article and the issues that I raised anyway. So I can add into anything linking back to the article if that's easier, but I think probably better to hear really from Penny as an overview of kind of what we could have done in that scenario better as preventative work.
Yes, yes. Penny, what is NVR?
Right. Well, I'm trying to think where NVR would fit well into what you've just been describing, Mac, where parents are struggling to coordinate and struggling, for me, with a kind of psychotherapeutic background. The word contain came up. What's containing this child? And if parents aren't in a position where they can function in a united way, what's the next level? You know, I think for NVR, we call it a child-focused, parent-centered approach. So who is helping these parents manage this situation? I think that's what NVR does. So when you describe your conversations with parents, you know, the question that I would add to that is, and who can help you with this? Who else is holding you? You know, Katie and I agree very much that it takes a village to raise a child, but I would argue it takes a village to support parents to raise children. So it has to be parent-centered. And what actually happens is a whole load of parent blaming. The responsibility goes onto the parents. You should be doing this more. You should be doing less of that. You know, this is your fault. This is your fault. But parents parent within a context. And we also know the impact of context on parenting. We're all, you know, trauma informed and ACE aware now. It's not that simple. And I think anything that identifies looking for kind of who done it, who to blame and shame, whether it's usually a parent, both parents, or the child, or, you know, variations on that theme, but not looking at the broader contexts that are supporting the behaviours that are dangerous and harmful and, you know, at least unhelpful. So for me, NVR is a collection, you know, one way of framing NVR, and there are many that come to mind, but one, it can be seen as a very strategic approach with very clear strategies that you can give to a family system so that they can show up and support the parents in a way that's manageable for everyone. And that's family, kinship groups, and even professionals and services, everybody kind of singing off the same hymn sheet in a way that is non-punitive, non-violent, and based on kind of compassion for all involved. And it's very clear. I think when you describe those parents who can't agree on their parenting approach, we get that a lot. The polarization that happens in couples anyway over various things certainly often happens over parenting, where you end up with one moving to the stricter position and in response the other moving into the more, you know, easygoing permissive permission, as if there's only two. And once there is that polarization and it increases again, the parent's capacity to unite and contain and parent is absolutely diminished. So for me, nonviolent resistance, the higher MOMAs approach offers a new connecting authority, which is not even a place in the middle of those two extremes. It's something else in many ways. And we find that it helps parents find that balance between care and discipline, you know, discipline as in the original meaning of the word, which is teaching. You know, you have a disciple, you teach them, and we're citizen raising, aren't we? We're raising the building blocks of society, and that's, you know, that's a job with strong implications, as we can see. So does that help?
Yes. Okay, do you want to add anything to that?
Not really. I think, well, I mean, there's so many different ways that we could go off on that. Penny mentioned trauma-informed and ACEs. We've talked about trauma-informed practice before, about what that is. Penny, you said we're all trauma-informed and ACE-aware now. I'm not sure that everyone is. So I think that is one thing that is important, is that anyone that is working with professionals, they are informed of what, you know, the impact of trauma and how we contain that. And also the adverse childhood experiences. We need to be aware that separation is one of the ACEs that we know. And we've got to manage these things. So I think there's so many tangents we could go off on just that bit that Penny's just said. That you can take your pick as to where you want to go with it. We could be here all day.
Let me ask you a question about what NVR is not. Something I think most Americans would think whenever we hear that term is the work of MLK, Martin Luther King, for example, or Gandhi.
Gandhi.
And so what, and it also may suggest that NVR or nonviolent resistance is to somehow let a child take control, or let the parents kind of be passive and not do what parents are supposed to be doing, which is control and command and direct a child. Is that is that accurate? Is that what NVR is not? How do we make sure that we are all on the same page when we talk about the term?
Well, in terms of the origins, you bang on. Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, yeah, all those ideas. As you know, what happened? Chaim Omer and his team got together with Gene Sharp's books, the trilogy in the 70s. I've got them here. I've got my library. So, methods of nonviolent action, and they leafed through them. Chaim Omer started with the idea of raising parental presence. In these situations, a parent cannot be influential unless they have a legitimate presence. And that, again, that needs to be supported systemically in the system by everyone around. So originally it was how to raise that new authority, that parental presence. And then they brought in the idea of the nonviolence resistance. And I think Gene Sharp got down to 198 methods of nonviolent resistance, and a fair few of them are not really child friendly. So they went through the lot and they pulled out the ones that could be adapted into a parenting approach to raise parental presence and legitimate their authority. So we have things like the announcement. To a large extent, it's a communication process, getting dialogue going, getting things put in words and said to the child fundamentally. And the more people that are on board and saying the same things, the more impactful that is. And we know that to be true. Rather than rewards and punishments and incentives, which we also know to be limited in their long-term success, very successful in the short term, but there's very little evidence of any long-term change achieved by them. If you look at the work of Alfie Cohen, he goes into this in great detail, well worth a read. So rather than that, it utilizes the power of public opinion, which is extremely powerful in change. Yeah. Again, going back to, the Greensboro counter protests, there was not a lot of forcing anybody to do anything, but the messages were clear and they spread, in an age before the internet. So the power of public opinion changed behaviors and changed a lot. So it's drawing on the force of public opinion, but not in a shaming, blaming way, because what you're resisting is not the child. You're resisting the behavior. Yes. And that distinction is hugely important. We think, the person isn't the problem is the problem. So yes, that could be.
Ask you for an example. I think is an example of, let's say a child gets into, has a very bad breakdown, or not a breakdown, a meltdown, we would say, where they start throwing things and they get really angry, and it's a behavior that a parent cannot tolerate because it's going to put people in danger, and the child themselves. And then there are enough friends around where the parent contacts one of the child's friends and tells them, hey, can you text, my child, my son or my daughter, and just let them know. So I heard about what happened yesterday at the house. I'm here if you want to talk. Just wanted to let you know that I'm aware of what's going on. Is that an example of how you can get the community around the child so that the child knows, oh, there are other people who are aware of what's going on, and that holds them accountable?
That's a really good message of concern that you did. It's very much so. So yes, I heard what happened. I think the message in the middle, the idea is that you're communicating, you are one of us, and this is not what we do. So rather than getting a sense of, like a lot of punishments are about, right, you're excluded for the day, you go and sit on the naughty. So, it's distancing, raising parental presence and raising links and connections is about giving that message. So I heard, you are one of us, you matter, we care about you, it's not what we do. And if there's anything that I can do to support you in that, then I'm here. So yeah. And it also has that, children often are able to keep things private. We live in a very privately minded culture. So everything happens behind closed doors within the four walls, and nobody is allowed to know what's going on. And for a lot of children, the idea that actually mum, dad, both are part of a broader network, and we all look after each other and we talk and information is spread is hugely impactful, because quite often they will be able to have a face at school and a completely different one at home, which doesn't give children that consistency of care, that containment, they will find the gaps between parents, they will find the gaps between institutions and providers, and it kind of closes and everything kind of links up, which they often greatly protest about. But also it's hugely comforting to know that you're held in this web of people who are concerned about you.
Yes.
Rather
And
than fighting or arguing about what's the right approach or
punish.
yes, and I'd like to get Katie's input on this. I think, Katie, isn't it the case that in your article, isn't it when NVR, tactics are not used, that child doesn't have that web. Therefore, that child is going to find that community somewhere else, right? And in some destructive ways. Can you go into that a little bit about what happened to the boy in your article compared to what should have been happening?
I don't think it's even necessarily about specifically that boy in that article. I think it applies to any child who is left alone without that network of support. They've only got themselves. So which way are they going to go? If a child is feeling that they're at risk of harm and they haven't got anywhere to go, what two options do they have? They have fight or flight, or internalize and start self-harming. But in order to remove themselves from a potential problem, they've only got those two ways to go, haven't they? Unless they can go elsewhere to say, can you help me? I don't know how to manage this. I mean, we're mediators, so we would say, well, if you were in that circumstance, we'd negotiate and find a solution. But these are children, we're not arming them with their skills to be able to do that. So they are going to go back into the only thing that they know and have learned at those ages, which is the default of fight and flight. We don't arm them with the tools to de-escalate and negotiate and compromise and talk things through and explore the options and understand the emotion behind the behaviour. We don't teach any of that. So where are they going to go? There's only those two options, and that leaves two pretty big problems. Either way. And I think it was nothing to do with the boy in the article, but what I was also alluding to was where you don't feel that you fit. If you can't go to mum, or you can't go to dad, or you can't go to someone externalized in the family, then there are many gang cultures and many things like that are very happy to swoop up a very vulnerable person and say, listen, this is where you belong. Come on in. And that's the worry. And this is what we do see this is why we have over here postcode wars. I think you probably have the same thing, zip code wars. But we've got areas where people won't cross over to the other side of the road because it's a different postcode. But surely then within that postcode, you're not going to be able to fix anything. I think it's too big. It would be great to move in and stop that. But what you have got is that entire postcode where you can go to say, help me, but not help me in the sense of let's make this a bigger problem and go and fight with the other postcode. But, help me. What can I do? Where can we go? How can we resolve this?
Yes. And from both of you, can you guys keep just giving us more tips, practical tips for parents and when they're dealing with some of these co-parenting issues and conflicts with their own children?
Can I just jump in? Sorry. And I think this is also, and Mac, I'm not sure if this was what you were alluding to when you said to Penny, tell us what NVR isn't. I think because it's got, and this is a big difference as well between a language that you use in America, so you use domestic violence still as a terminology.
Yeah, we do.
no longer, we don't use custody and we don't use violence in those two contexts with family law. I think when you say violence, most people think immediately physical, which is why we changed our language over here from a family law point of view to be domestic abuse, because abuse isn't always physical. And I think, again, the same with NVR, the word violent would suggest, that you only use that where you've got issues of physical violence. But what it is and what it isn't, I suppose, and what I'm trying to say is, it isn't about the violence. It's about not responding in a way that is aggressive, antagonizing, or shaming, or anything else. It's about scooping up. It's not about soft parenting. It's not about child decision making and allowing children to do whatever they want. It's definitely not that. It is containment and support, and working through, how do we support this child whose behavior is obviously showing an unmet need, and that unmet need is driven by an emotion. How do we get to that, and how can we help them? Penny, I have no idea if that was an okay explanation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's kind of my view of what NVR is from a non-NVR expert.
Yeah, and often we hear from parents, but we're not violent. That, you know, the assumption is that they're being violent. No, but it's basically moving back from coercive control. You know, not parenting through coercive control, which, as I say, is reward and punishment, and it only gets short-term results until the reward and the punishment is removed, and then everything kind of reverts back again. But yeah, we are taught to, you know, overall manage people through coercive control. That's what we model. With toddlers, we stick them on the naughty step. And then with, you know, adolescents, we ban them from school, and, you know, we do something that makes them hurt. This is going to hurt you. Yeah, do this.
You've opened a can of worms, because Penny and I had a big conversation about this. So again, over here, we had a change within the last couple of years with regards to domestic abuse and what is considered domestic abuse. And one of those things that is now considered domestic abuse is coercive control. But the funny or not funny thing about it is, we live in a world where we start
That's what we model.
Yeah. From day dot, we teach people coercive control, you know, do this or do this and, which is saying, I want to control your behavior by providing you with either a reward or a punishment for you doing it. So it makes things very messy and very muddy over here in the UK, that we've got now coercive control sitting underneath an illegal act, which we all, if you're a parent, you're coercively controlling someone. If you're a teacher,
you're told to. You're told to.
Police officers, everyone. So how then do we define that actually this has been abuse, as opposed to just individual acts? And I think that's a huge thing to try and change. How do we do?
And I would also offer that if that's what we're modelling for our children as a way of negotiating your way through the world, you just carry a big stick and make people comply. How can we be shocked and appalled when they do it back? And when our children become violent with us, if the services who we then call on to help tell us, you have to control them harder, you have to take away this, take away that, you have to punish them, it's just modelling more of the same. So for me, NVR offered something that was different. And, what Katie's just described about young people with their unmet needs for belonging and a voice, we need to model that in front of them. We need to treat each other like that. They need to see us, the adult world, coordinating up, having dialogue, sorting things out, collectively problem solving, the things that you do in mediation, that you encourage in mediation. And it needs to be broader.
Yes. So a lot to say.
The old here all day.
Yeah. So a few thoughts. Are there limits to NVR then? Because I'm starting to think, well, what about in cases where a child is so out of control? Would NVR really work? B- or are we not just seeing into their future and realizing one day they're going to go from the parent trying to do these things to then a police officer holding them against a wall, trying to force them to do the right thing, because that's just reality when people go into criminality. So where does NVR fail at any point, or do you believe that it can work if we just
You're
apply it
asking
right?
the wrong person here, aren't you? You know, I get told all the time, NVR isn't suitable for everything. I'm like, I mean, the thing for NVR, the worse the situation, the more NVR you have to do. But I will, of course, it has to be safety first. You have to get the safety in. You have to make sure that you've got the situation under control enough to keep everybody safe. But the way you do that is hugely important. And what you're saying, the messages you're giving while you're doing that is hugely important. Restricting somebody's liberty is a huge punishment. You don't also need to be telling them they're a terrible person, or hurting them. We are going to keep you and everyone else safe. So we're going to do this right now. And then you can get strategic. Then you can start thinking about how to implement the NVR strategies to whatever level becomes necessary.
And just to jump on that as well, Penny, you just said exactly that. It's not just about the safety around the child. It's this all the person, not even necessarily a child. It's about making them feel safe. Because when somebody doesn't feel safe, their behavior is not going to be good, because they're going to again be triggered into fight or flight, or freeze or faint if they are not going to do the two extremes. So it's about, the first thing is, you are safe. You are held. We are here. Not, right, let's move you even further away into continue in that criminal way, continue going and doing that, continue all of those terrible things, because we don't want you here.
Yeah, you're not one of us. Yeah.
Because the more we do that, the bigger that group over there is going to become. And then what's going to happen?
And the angrier. If you don't bring the child into the village, the child will burn the village down. That's what we see everywhere. You have to. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys, how much of this goes back to the parents, again, the village helping the parents so that they can be good modelers for what the children are to see? When we were talking last week, Katie, it was about children sensing that division between parents, or they're like sponges, right? They don't know what they don't know, and sometimes I've heard it said that sometimes when two parents don't model good conflict resolution, even when they're in the same home, when children don't see you fight in a healthy way, then they never learn that fighting in a healthy way is possible. I mean, we're always going to have conflict, but when people see that it can be done in a way that doesn't like blow things up and start, turning into, fists and swear words, when people see that it's possible, that you can have de-escalation, that people can exhibit these qualities, then it's going to lead certain places. So how much of this goes back to parents, and what would you guys say to parents, today, to help make sure that they provide good examples for their children? To both of you.
I think, sorry, Penny, is that okay for me to hop in? It was coming out. So what I was going to say is, I think the most important thing is when two people separate, in probably 95% of cases, there's going to be at least a window of time when they really, really dislike each other. Yeah. Whether that's at the time they decide to separate, or whether it comes after, they've mutually agreed to separate and it seems okay. They're going to hit bumps in that road. And I think one of the biggest things for us to know is there are usually two truths It's the same story, and two parents are looking at it from different angles. If you and I are sitting across this table here and I draw a W, it's a W to me, it's an M to you. Those two truths can occur at the same time, and it's okay. It's okay for that W to also be an M. I don't have to make you be convinced. I don't have to tell you that, no, you have to agree that this W is a W, and you don't have to make me believe that it's actually an M. It's okay to have a parent who is slightly more strict, and the other parent doesn't have to move further and further away from that person that they don't like and the behaviour that they're doing in order to counter it. It's about saying, that's okay, that's your role and this is mine, and I'm going to sit here in mine and you sit where you are in yours, and that's okay. I'm not going to ask you to change. If you wish to come towards me somehow so we can contain the child in a smaller area, brilliant, and I will move with you. But if you stay there and I stay here, that's okay. And I think that's a big part of it. It's about the fact there can be two truths. And we are okay to accept that there are two truths. Because when you start trying to control the other person, that was the best part of advice I was given when I went through my separation, was stop trying to control the other person and make their behaviour better for the children, because it's never going to happen. And the more you try, the worse it will get, and the more you're going to move the other way in order to counter it. You have to let them do what they're doing, and that's what's going to have to happen. But put all that energy onto being the best version that you can be of you, and make yourself that super strong anchor that you are there. And if that other person keeps floating around and doing all the other bits, it's okay, because you're there and you are safe and you are stable, and they know where they stand with you. And it's the one piece of advice I would say, focus on you. Do the best that you can do for your children. Don't worry about the other person. You can't change them. You can't make them do something. The more you're going to try and make them, the more they're going to go the opposite direction, most probably. I mean, if my ex-husband asked me now to do something, I would absolutely categorically, even now, do the opposite, as far away from that as I possibly could. And I'm a mediator. So, just accepting it's okay. Two truths, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll get my soapbox over to you, Penny.
No, I'd absolutely echo that. One of the things we say all the time is you cannot control what someone else does, whether it's your ex-partner, whether it's your child, whether it's the headmaster of the school. You can't control what someone else does. You can only control what you do, how you hold yourself, and your responses. And yes, staying regulated so that your child can lean into that. Definitely. Again, modelling it.
Keeping those boundaries as well. Children need boundaries. So back to what you said about, strict parent, lenient parent, that lenient parent might be much more appealing at the start, but they're not going to be so appealing when things get so bad that then that person tries to implement rules and boundaries where it's like, hang on a minute, I'm here because you don't give me those rules and boundaries. And now you're trying to put in rules and boundaries. I don't want to listen to your rules and boundaries. And actually, I'd rather be over with the other person, because at least I know what my boundaries are and what's expected. Whereas you're just hopping in now and deciding to suddenly come down harsh on me because I've pushed things too far to the point that you're not going to tolerate it anymore. And then what happens? You've got two broken people and this child again stuck in the middle. And often a broken relationship with this person who was steady, I was going to say strong and steady, and kept their place, because this was, fun time parent who seemed much more appealing at that time, because the child was unstable and wanted to just go and be free and not have these boundaries. But it's a temporary feeling of not wanting boundaries, because suddenly it feels very unsafe when you're no longer held, when you've gone through that bit of trauma, and you suddenly look around and go, oh, what's holding me now? Nothing. Where do I go? Where do I fit? Because I don't have rules and expectations, so I'm not sure really where I am. So where shall I go? Oh yeah, look, over here. Lovely gang over here that are going to welcome me with open arms. The other parent might have by that point, said, I can't do this anymore. I can't cope with the constant rejection. I need to move on. There's nothing else I can do. Well, if they've then gone, where does that child go? They're stuck, aren't they? They're lost at sea. And it's one of the pictures, the visuals I've got on one of the other articles on LinkedIn. It is that child stuck. There's two boats and a child is stuck in the sea. And these parents aren't working together to hop onto one boat and hoist the child in, or one jump in and bring the child. They're kind of going, come to me. And the child is in the middle. It's either go there, or actually let's hold on to something else that might be there at that time. And that might not be a good thing that's there.
Yeah. And I would say you can work through NVR strategies to make sure that there is an alternative for when parents are incapacitated. We can't always parent. It's a lot. Wow. So yeah, if you've put the groundwork in and you've manufactured and mobilized that village, that network of support, then if you go down, there are still other pillars holding up the child's world that you can draw on. So it can't just be two parents. Parenting happens in a relational context, and you have to appeal to that context in order to build in resilience. Otherwise, it's too fragile. It falls apart. You need those layers because, yes, children need walls and that boundaries, and they need to push them to know they're there. Yeah. Now, in a lot of the families that we work with, the parents' legitimacy has been diminished, often through abuse. And often it's women, not always, of course, but often it's mothers who have experienced domestic abuse and they're now lone parents in a household, not what they chose. And often, not always, a teenage child, often teenage boy, will get to that age where he starts asserting his authority in the way he's been shown. Now, just because she has standards and boundaries and this is what she expects does not mean that she's regarded by that child as a legitimate voice of authority. So where NVR comes in, we raise her presence so that the system reflects, actually, we're with your mum, we agree with your mum, and we're worried about you, and we're going to support her because violence isn't okay. This has to stop. But if that mother is also in a system where the school is saying, well, you need to enforce it more, you need to take away his Xbox, you need to do, then she's lost. And the school is also communicating to the boy, your mum's no good. She's not a good parent. And ultimately, the parent then gets blamed. You're not doing it. So, no, we've got to do better. We've got to do better because the child, as Katy says, is, wavering around looking for something clear and certain. And there are communities that will gladly scoop him up.
Exactly.
Sorry. I forgot what I was going to say now. I won't say it twice. I was going to say, what was I going to say? I'm so sorry. It's gone. Penny, what did you... I was going to say that extends also to the courts. So Penny, you said, where the school is saying, well, as a parent, you need to do X, Y, and Z. When a court comes in and scoops up the responsibility and suddenly shuffles it away from the parents or parent and says, well, this is what's going to happen. Where do they go when it goes wrong? Because over here, you have different laws. So I think your parenting orders, your child arrangements orders are much more enforceable. Over here, they're not so much. So when that order fails, after a court has stepped in and said, well, yeah, mum, I know that you want the child and you want to do this, that, and the other, but actually we're going to come in and say it should do something different. That parent's ability then to parent has diminished because it's been overridden by someone else who's not supporting and holding. And then where are they? Where is that service after separation when it does go wrong? When that other person's boundaries, suddenly a child realizes that they're not held and they can't go back to the court and say, excuse me, Mr. Judge, you made a terrible decision and I want to be back now with this parent, or things have gone wrong, help me. That's not there. And this is what NVR is. It's like, that's not there. So something has to be. And I can honestly say, I don't think my children would be living with me. And two, I'm not sure I would still be sane had it not been for the fact that I had people like Penny, people who could look at it in a good way and help me. Not people saying, oh yeah, Katie, what you're doing is right. Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. But saying, okay, you're doing that, but that might not be the right thing. And that's okay. I'm okay for someone to challenge me, but I wouldn't be here without that support that I had. And my children wouldn't be as healthy as they are emotionally and mentally and physically if I hadn't have had that support that was all around me. And there's so many people that I meet day in, day out in this job that don't have it or that can't do it. And I think one of the big things is it's a difficult thing for men. You asked me on the last podcast recording, Mac, I talk a lot about boys and,
Yeah.
you know, is this an issue with boys? Yes. Yes, it is. Because men don't often have that wider network of support. They often find it more difficult to say, I need help, because we've taught them throughout their entire lives, you know, we'll sort it out. If they punch you, you punch them back.
Why not?
You fix it. You don't need anyone else, you know, but actually, yes, you do need wider support. I had a client just earlier this week. He's lost. I can see he's absolutely lost and does not know where to go. And he doesn't even have the one person that might have the two people, that might have the three people, that might have the 10 people. He doesn't even have the one. And even if we can find that one person to say, go and speak to Penny, go and speak to a domestic abuse service, go and speak to a mental health nurse, go and speak to your GP, that then we open the doors into that wider community of support. But men don't often have it, and boys don't know how to reach out for it.
Or
So-
they're not allowed to voice that need. So if there's a gang ready, then they've got that. They've got that collective support already made, but they don't have to say they need it. It's already there. There's your community right there.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've gone from zero around to lots around, but the negative, which is why I said, you know, I luckily had people that challenged me and said, okay, do you think you can do something better, or do you think you can do something different, or what is it that you're struggling with? Let's identify what's working well and what's not working well. Okay, so the things that aren't working well, who can help with those? And it's about going, where are your, because I'm no perfect parent, far from it. But it's about saying, where are your strengths? Okay, that's great. You're sorted, but where are your weaknesses? Who can help? Who can step in? And I had that. I luckily had that. But I think the first thing we've got to do, and you asked for tips on parents, the first thing you've got to do is one, acknowledge that we're not perfect. That's okay. That is fine. No one's perfect. That there are always going to be areas that we can do better at. And if we can't do better at it because we don't have it in us right now, somebody else can. And let's look at who can do that. So firstly, accepting I'm not perfect. Everything I do is not correct. But these are the things that are working and these are the things that aren't. So, you know, it's that. The first thing is hold up a mirror and that, you know, I had to do it, and it wasn't a pretty picture, you know. I had to accept, actually, I'm really not doing very well at this, and I'm really not doing very well at that. One of, you know, there were what would be considered to be negative coping mechanisms. I had negative coping mechanisms. I was in a state of trauma, and I had poor coping mechanisms, and those poor coping mechanisms were having a knock on to how I supported my children. And I needed the people around me to say, Katie, I know you're hurting. Let me help here. Let me make you safe. How can we help to get you safe? And in the meantime, how can I fill this void? So, you know, I'm being very self-deprecating right now. But I think it's important. And I think we need to be more able to say, I'm not perfect. I've done wrong. I work in this job, in this role, because I've been there. I've seen how hard it is. I know how difficult it is. And one of the most difficult things was holding up that mirror and saying, oops. And it comes again to, it ends with me, which I think was in that article again. We're all taught exactly what Penny's just said. Boys are taught this, but we're taught this. You know, I was taught to be quiet and let everyone else around me have what they need to have, because that's where I sat. That's the role that I played. And I'm still at the age that I am, working on undoing all of the things that I was taught and not becoming that insular, I'll just do it myself, and is everyone else around me okay? Yes, they're okay, so that's fine. But I wasn't okay. And so someone had to come and keep me safe, to say, you've got to be safe, because otherwise they're not safe. How can we help in this scenario? I hope that was helpful. I don't know if it was or not.
There's always somebody out there who will identify with the stories that you've gone through. I know it for a fact because of the mediations that I do. So everything that you've said, I think someone's going to identify with it, and it's going to be helpful for them. So thank you for sharing it. Yeah.
No trouble.
And Penny, did you want to add any points to that before we close out?
Yeah, I think what Katy described was people being there to step in, but it's a very different way of stepping in when these people have been sought out by Katy and guided by Katy, and Katy is able to say, it would really help me if you could do this, which is very different to people stepping in, wiping her aside.
Yeah.
And diminishing her presence and her legitimacy in the eyes of her child. They came in for her, not against her, and not in spite of her, and not, it's the attitude is everything.
Yes.
In terms of the long-term effects, and that's what NVR puts in. It's what Vicky Reynolds calls the solidarity team. You have a team around you. Some of them will offer constructive critique. Some will be shoulders to cry on. Some will be the people who will cook you a meal once a week, so at least then they know you'll be. It's bringing the village in practical ways, things that they can do, things that they can say, how they can respond, so that you can utilize a system's self-healing energies and build that resilience in, so that it can manage whatever problems come, whether it's gang membership, child-to-parent violence, perceived parental alienation, whatever it is, the system is ready to absorb it and manage it without having to wait for services to become available and then go away again. That's what, for me, NVR is about, building that in so it stays. Yeah. Professionals, practitioners can come in, can get that going and leave. And that lasts for generations. It's so precious.
And choosing the right people, because a lot of us do have, a little gang. And I've got it now, a little gang of friends that will say, whatever I do, Katy, it's fine. It's just you. They weren't the right people at that time, because I didn't need someone to just keep saying, keep doing what you're doing, because I needed people that were more objective and able to say, okay, well, this is what I need. I didn't need, I needed those people to hold me emotionally and keep me feeling safe emotionally, that I've got friends, but they weren't the people that I needed to come in and do those other bits. So I think an important part of that is for the parent, that they need to choose those right people. They need to find them and choose them. And even if, as I said, if they can find one, that one person will usually have other people that they can move to. That we don't want them to move to that one person who takes them into that gang way of life. We want them to go to the one good person, and that one good person will hopefully have a domino effect outwards into other good people and other good sources of support.
Yes, definitely. So one of the takeaways I'm having today is that it's all about parental empowerment. it's about not letting the parent be diminished in the eyes of the child, but having
Yeah.
this whole support system come in to, I guess, restore that what the parent should be in a child's eyes to be actually there.
And
Um,
often the parent that parent wants to be
mhm.
to support, to support that better self that
Yes.
circumstances often prevent. We say there are no bad parents, there are just unsupported parents. That's
Mm.
yeah.
Good. Thank you for all of it, guys. So, ladies, I think we use the word gang more in this episode than any other recording we've ever done in the last 5 years. And so, because it's a natural thing, right? This is how gang life starts. It's because people are looking for these kind of safety nets and they find it somewhere else. And it's in a negative,
Are usually
way.
vulnerable. Mm.
Exactly. And
Mm.
so lots of really good points made today. Thank you so much, ladies, for the time today and for all the knowledge you've contributed. And so hopefully someone's going to learn some things that they can take into their parenting. So Penny Ruth Willis of NVR Northampton, thank you so much for the time. And of course, as always, Katy Harris of Mediation Matters Midland, thank you so much. Folks can go to your websites for Penny. It's nvrnorthampton.co.uk. And Mediation Matters Midland is Mediation Matters Midlands, plural, .co.uk. And people can find out more about you on your websites. And of course, Bridging the Gap Conference 2026 is going to be in London, March 19th to 20th, and where you both will be there as speakers to teach people more about what you've been sharing today. All right, ladies, thank you again for coming on the LMI
Thank
podcast.
you.
And so if people out there want to check you out, they can visit your websites. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.